Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a fan of liminal spaces and unsettling places that feel rather familiar, then say no more. Tune in next week for the essential guide for a liminal space road trip. You will travel to many of the most popular liminal spaces in real life.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going on a road trip, and it's not just any regular old road trip to see the Grand Canyon or to visit your grandma who lives in some obscure nursing home. No, this is the essential guide to a liminal space road trip. In this video, we will be taking a hypothetical road trip around the world to see some of the most recognizable liminal space images, but in real life. Now, I will say now that I won't actually be visiting these places because I'm still in school, and I'm gonna need a lot more money from this whole YouTube thing before I can even consider doing something like that. But moving forward, I'd say I've covered about 90% of these liminal spaces that I'll be talking about in this video from my Finding the Locations of Liminal Spaces series, but you could always use this as a reminder of where these places are in the world, and also as a real-life map for where you could go to visit your nearest popular liminal space. Along with this, I also included the location of some popular images that I haven't covered before, so be sure to stick around for that. With all that introduction stuff out of the way, I do have a couple rules that I need to lay out before we go on this mildly uninteresting and super expensive hypothetical road trip. As liminal and nostalgic as they may be, we won't be visiting any schools or private properties on this road trip. I shouldn't have to really explain much else, I just don't want to be responsible for having people visiting places that they shouldn't really be visiting, so there's that. Not just this, but there are some places in the world that we can even visit if we really wanted to. Places like the Sanatorium Ingol in Ukraine are essentially impossible to get to, as Ukraine isn't currently allowing flights in or out of the country, and it's the same thing with other certain locations in the world, but that's okay, because we have 25 different locations that we can, in theory, travel to on the liminal space road trip. Our first liminal space location is in Monument Valley, Arizona. After getting your suitcase ready to go around the world, and after loading up on a bunch of snacks, we arrive in the middle of nowhere, just about 2.5 hours away from the Grand Canyon. If this place isn't looking liminal enough for you and isn't ringing any bells, maybe this photo will help you remember. After snagging a photo next to this stop sign, the trip continues to its second location, level 11 of the backrooms.
Level 11 is classified as a Class 1 difficulty and is safe, secure, and has a minimal entity count. The level is pretty much an infinite city with skyscrapers and other city type buildings. The cool thing about it though is that some of the buildings in this level are buildings from real life.
10 hours later, we arrive in Los Angeles, California. While we're here, we could take the time to visit places like the Hollywood Sign, Universal Studios, the Santa Monica Pier, but most importantly, we have to go to 698 Wilshire Boulevard. After standing in a random street in the middle of downtown LA, it's probably a good idea to settle down at a hotel and get some rest. After waking up, it's time to go to one of the faces on the liminal space Mount Rushmore, Bliss, aka the hill from the Windows XP wallpaper. Located off the side of the road in Shelville Colony, we'll get to witness one of the most viewed images in human history, but in real life. And then we're spending the next 2 days going to Colorado. 18 hours later, we will probably be regretting every decision we've made to do this road trip, but we arrive in Estes Park, Colorado, just to stay at another hotel because we need all the rest we can get. This hotel is none other than the Stanley Hotel featured in The Shining. Unfortunately, almost all of the liminal spaces shown in The Shining aren't actually found in the Stanley Hotel, as these were all rooms on a movie set. With that being said, there's still some liminality to be found, as most hotels tend to already have that feeling, and the Stanley Hotel is also very iconic, so I'm sure the 18-hour drive would still be very worth it. Maybe. After 16 more hours of driving, we arrive in Chicago, Illinois. While in Chirac, we can visit the Bean, go to the top of the Willis Tower, and eventually hit up the Children's Museum, just to witness this popular liminal space. When we are done taking cryptic photos in the playroom of a random children's museum, we leave Chicago on day 7 to go on a 4-hour ride to Hartford City, Indiana. In the small town of Hartford City, Indiana, we can experience many local businesses scattered throughout the downtown area. Or at least that's what I'd imagine we'd do, since that's all I could think of this small town having to offer. Aside from this, it does have a special attraction, the Monroe House. Assuming that we don't get sacrificed by a satanic cult in the basement of this strangely familiar house, we'll be lucky enough to go on a quick 3-hour drive to the capital of Michigan, Lansing. Lansing surprisingly has a lot to offer in terms of exploration and having something to do. There's many big capitol buildings you could visit, there's a zoo, and even a dying mall that's supposedly losing visitors every passing year. While technically just a few minutes away from Lansing, Michigan, the Lansing Mall is actually located in Waverly, Michigan. The sole purpose of visiting this mall is to play some arcade games in this very desolate room. After another quick 2-hour drive, we end up at the Maumee Bay State Park in Lucas County, Ohio. At this point, we would have traveled to many different liminal spaces throughout the day, so we might as well end day 7 off at the Maumee Bay Lodge and Conference Center. While we get some much needed rest from our liminal adventures, we can take a quick gander at a skybox playroom. On the morning of day 8, we can get our luggage packed and ready to take a 4.5-hour drive to Morgantown, West Virginia. Similar to the Lansing Mall and how it's a slowly dying place for people to go and shop, the Mountaineer Mall has gained a reputation for being dead. From a lack of visitors and shops, the mall provides an overwhelming feeling of liminality in its truest form, as the mall is likely 1 foot out the door from looking like this, while also standing high with empty stores and memories that once were. To end off day 8, we'll try to squeeze in a 6-hour drive to Ridgefield Park, New Jersey to catch a movie at an AMC theater. After watching the movie at this AMC theater, we'll settle down at a hotel and see what day 9 has to bring. 2 long days later, we end up in Atlanta, Georgia to see the High Museum of Art. Inside the museum is this lesser known liminal space, but it's still on the list, so you gotta deal with it. On the early morning of the 11th day, we wake up in Atlanta, Georgia and take an insane hypothetical 10-hour drive to New Boston, Texas, because we can totally do that. Our endurance is just crazy like that or something. At whatever time we arrive in this small Texas town, we'll check in at the very last hotel in the United States on this road trip. The Holiday Inn in New Boston, Texas may not sound familiar, and it's because I actually haven't covered this one yet. If you were a fan of the old school cursed images from the mid-2010s, then you may recognize this picture right here. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll get to witness this inaccessible lounge area for ourselves in New Boston, Texas. And at this point, it's the last night we'll be in the United States, as we are going to Europe on day 12. If everything somehow goes according to plan, we'll wake up early on day 12, check out of the hotel, and see this legendary image for one last time. Our last stop in the United States is in Houston, Texas, which is just about a 5-hour drive away. The George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, Texas is actually known for being quite liminal, and if we're lucky enough, we should be able to see some of the places and hallways that I'm showing now. Next up, we're gonna take a plane to Lipson, Portugal. Now, at this point in the video, it's going to be hard to track the days as we are now out of the United States. And the point I'm trying to make is that it's hard to get a realistic estimate on how many places and countries you can go to within a certain amount of days. Because of this, I'm just going to put away with the day count, since I'm not even sure how I'd make this video make any more sense than it already does. Once we land in a whole nother continent on planet Earth, we'll book a reservation at the Casa de Amendoeira. This, what seems to be a fancy Airbnb, is quote, located near the National Pantheon and Monastery of São Vicente de Fora, between the bustle of some places that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. The house stakes a claim to the ancient city and its treasures, as well as to the light reflecting off of the immaculate whiteness of its walls. Ladies and gentlemen, the pool rooms may not exist in real life, but this is as close as we're going to get. When we are ready to leave the pool rooms, which has a minimum stay of 3 days, a 3-hour flight will take us all the way to London, England, to a place we are a little too familiar with. I don't think this place needs any introduction, but this iconic liminal space and backrooms location has been visited numerous times by many people online, and I think this is definitely one of the bigger hotspots to see on this entire trip. But something and somewhere even more iconic within the mean streets of London, England is at 171 Freston Road, the bridge from Never Gonna Give You Up. I think it's awesome that within 30 minutes of one another, you could visit one of the biggest liminal space images in real life, and then see the location for one of the biggest memes of all time. The next location on the road trip is insanely far away from London, England, but it is technically the last place to go while we're in Europe, so we might as well check it off the list. Just 15 hours away by taking a plane is Svalbard, Norway. the place most known for having these cute little South Park sort of houses, and it looks insanely beautiful at all times, night or day. After reading up on the place, I guess there's only so much to do on this little island, like visiting museums and cemeteries, but I think the experience would be very worth it. After having a good time on a small Norwegian island, we'll somehow catch a flight all the way over in Hong Kong. Upon arrival, we'll head over to the Hidden Planet Mystery Tour located at Hong Kong's Repulse Bay Beach. The Hidden Planet Mystery Tour is one of those walk-through art exhibits that give you an immersive experience to another world, sort of like Meow Wolf if you're familiar with that. The Hidden Planet place is most recognized online for featuring this liminal space in one of its rooms, and I'd like to think that this entry is pretty recognizable, so now you know where it's at in the world if you ever wanted to visit it for yourself. But the problem with this is that I'm not entirely sure if this art exhibit even exists nowadays. I've tried to find recent reviews of the place, but the last one I could find was from October of 2022. So if there's any people from Hong Kong that want to verify, look out for them in the comments. The next location we'll be traveling to is in Hamamatsu, Japan, where the classic flooded Hamamatsu train station picture was once taken. And in the realm of visiting places that were once popular on the internet, we could take the time to visit the building that was once Microsoft Bimbos. Next on the list is in Indonesia, and for all the Indonesian people who are about to comment Ada Indonesia Coy, just know that you're freaking awesome. That being said, we'll be taking a stop at the uniquely themed restaurant called
Strawberry Capybara.
I can't help but mention that this place has insanely good reviews, so not only do you get to see some iconic weirdcore imagery in real life, but you also get some pretty good food by the looks of it. After this, we'll take a flight to Junagadh, India to take a visit to another hotel. But what makes this entry a little different is that we are not actually going to look at a room within the inside, but rather on the outside of the hotel. At the Hotel Krishna and Garden Restaurant, it's home to this liminal space, a place that is overly familiar to me, despite me never actually being there. But after watching enough Harold Bakhtar and Small Brain American, two channels that you should definitely check out, I can see myself visiting India in the next couple of years. It's just a personal interest I've randomly developed, and only time will tell if I'll ever get to chillax in this pool area. Just 2 countries away, we will be Iraning from India. Get it? Like Iraning? Because we're about to go to Iran? Anyways, after leaving India, we will arrive to the capital of Iran, Tehran. On the eastern outskirts of Tehran is a massive failed housing project. What you're seeing now is essentially a big ghost town of vacant apartments, and if you're wanting to know more about the information of these buildings, then go watch my last Liminal Spaces video at the 16-minute mark. Assuming that we're successful in getting a local Iranian to show us these buildings up close, we'll get to go to the second to last location on the road trip, Doha, Qatar. One of my favorite liminal space images is an almost unrealistic picture of the Doha skyline. The lack of shadows and overall cleanliness and surrealness of the image makes it almost seem fake, like it's a computer-generated image of some sort. And I honestly think that this could be considered Frutiger Aero if you slapped on some lens flares and water splashes. Now lastly, for the very last liminal space we'll be visiting on this very possible to-do road trip, we will take a 24-hour flight to San Jose, Costa Rica. When we arrive in Costa Rica, we will be there to finish everything up by going to the National Children's Museum, just for the sole purpose of seeing this room. And it'll totally be worth it. From traveling in a big circle around the United States to going to different places throughout Europe and Asia, we'll get to make many different memories and experience many different cultures, but most importantly, we'll get to experience these liminal photos in real life. I guarantee you that there's many traveling errors and mistakes made throughout this video, but this was all just for fun, so no need to take any of it that seriously. Now, I will say, even despite how insane this whole trip would actually be, if my channel managed to blow up and if I had the help from a big sponsor of some sort, I'd be more than willing to visit all of the liminal spaces I could possibly go to, but in the meantime, I'll just be here looking at them from my computer screen, and if you want to help manifest this crazy idea of me actually seeing some of these places one day, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and stick around until something like that happens. Thank you to all of these badass people who have made fan art of my little channel character. Feel free to join the Discord. You could talk to me if I'm on there, send in fan art, all that cool stuff. And here's the shoutouts for the people who have stuck around on my Patreon. Bella M, Damsandee, 3LMMO, Jera, Sinful, Josh S, Josh Wynn, Landon Rodriguez, Leon S, Lexi Bunny, Master Shake, Meeko, Misazaki, Cher, The Good Bunch, and Z Solt. You guys are freaking awesome.